Hey everybody, welcome to Fridays with Steve. It's good to be back. Took a little bit of time off over the past few weeks, delivering kids to colleges. This is a big year in the household. We have twin boys that both headed off to college, kind of bucking the trend of their buddies and that they're not sticking around. So we dropped one off in Washington, D.C. and one off in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. So it was a lot of fun, maybe a couple of tears, but it was good to have that time, and they're both doing well so far. We are getting a few complaints about the heat and the George Washington mailroom and the speed of packages getting out to their intended recipients. So, but it was good to have that time. But it's also good to be back with you. We're going to spend the next month talking about licensing in this Microsoft world, this CSP world. I'm going to have a couple of guests. We're going to dive deep into a couple of different areas where we can help, specific programs and specific opportunities we might have to work together. But I'm going to just start out with kind of a quick intro to this, a couple of resources, and we'll sort of go from there. I do like the continuing surprises that our marketing team delivers. I can, however, confirm I own neither a pair of suspenders or a bow tie at this point in my life. I do remember being talked into suspenders by the tuxedo rental salesman 30 years ago. Interesting device, and I guess if they suit you, that's great. I never found them very compelling, but I love seeing what the team has me doing this time in cartoon suspender fashion. And so the way I wanted to approach this, to kind of kick off the month, is just a quick history lesson. I've got enough gray hair to prove that I've been around this space for a while. And so I just want to talk about a few things, kind of how we got here. For some folks, you might be, relatively fluent in the licensing of today, or you're, 5 or 10 years into your career. Because of that, I think there's a couple of things that provide some unique perspective, might even make you feel a little bit better about the space that we're in right now. Some ideas and tools that kind of walk through a scenario, talk a bit about some value in the licensing, and then we'll use the set of business SKUs to kind of pull them apart a little bit. I'll share some tools with you, and then we'll wrap up. I'll talk about some gotchas. I'll talk about how we help customers, some of the things we see, and hopefully give you a good primer, a good foundation for what we want to spend time on the rest of the month. So a bit of a history lesson. It's taken a lot to get to this point in Microsoft licensing, in cloud licensing. Just for sort of frame of reference, I started my IT career almost 30 years ago. I went to work for Microsoft directly in 2002, so a little over 20 years ago. And so, either off to the side or in a very direct way, been working with this stuff for a long time. And, and originally licensing was, completely an on-prem thing, on premises, which meant, managing installs, managing media. We used to get DVDs in the mail and maintaining certificates of authenticity. At one point, there was this crossover from sort of retail licensing to volume licensing, and there was a lot of like legacy investment that companies had made. Organizations used to go to Best Buy and buy Office off the shelf, and so they had the media, then individual product keys, all of those kinds of things to drive their licensing and the products that they needed to do their business. Managing that was an absolute nightmare. It was super complicated. Microsoft at one point At one point, it was called piracy. I think it's more fair to call it, compliance challenges. Were there software pirates? Sure. But at the same time, it was so complex that oftentimes organizations were simply out of compliance through lack of knowledge or lack of visibility to what they were doing or what they needed. Microsoft sort of waded in. They literally had a function and a team called anti-piracy. That was probably not the best brand and the best marketing in the world when it comes to making your customers feel good. That changed over time. The next big hurdle was sort of the transition to online plus on-prem licensing. Things like Exchange moving to the cloud. All of a sudden, you had this hybrid model. You still had an Active Directory. You still had Office installed locally. Still driven by things like keys and seat counts. And then today, it's really driven by identity, right? It's driven by, hey, I have 300 seats of this and I have, 287 assigned seats to the people in my organization. The tools around that stuff have actually greatly improved. And so it's been a long journey through things like volume licensing and enterprise agreements, software assurance. One of the things that we don't even think about anymore is sort of product upgrade rights. If you have a seat of 0365 and Outlook gets better, or the back end of Exchange gets better, your product gets better. We used to live in a world where we would sell people a license that was sort of a point in time license to the software, but then they needed software assurance to upgrade it, or they had to come back and rebuy the full license after a certain amount of time. I mean, it was a lot of work. And so I offer this just as some consolation for those of you who, have this in your sphere of influence. It used to be worse, used to be harder, it used to be more challenging, and say what we might, Microsoft has done a pretty good job, over the past couple of decades of really investing. So one of the resources we use with customers is something like this, right? The introduction to Microsoft Online Services and their licensing. A lot of information here, very information dense. It's a two-sided PDF that we can provide to customers if they're new to this space. Fewer and fewer customers are truly new to this space. The greenfield customer is fewer and further between all the time. But it talks about the operating system, Office 365, and some of those key capabilities. You can see the frontline and the E SKUs sort of laid out side by side with some basics about what they include. You've got this notion of EMS, or enterprise mobility and security, being that add-in to really take what you're doing to the next level, with a lot of security management tools, device management, application management tools, to really make things a lot better in your environment. And then this M365. It brings everything together with Office apps, cloud services, and device, right? And so you really can, boil your licensing needs in a single SKU, and deliver that to all of the folks in your organizations. You absolutely can mix and match. Oftentimes, we will do licensing reviews with customers, and many times the results are maybe similar to down from a price standpoint. We can save them a few dollars, but oftentimes it's over licensing in one area and under licensing in another, right? That some tools are spread too broadly, others are not spread broadly enough. And so we spend a lot of time with customers doing reviews and really working to make sure that the things that they're doing match the licensing they have, right? If there's a gap, hey, maybe we can help you get there, right? If there's a cost challenge, maybe we can help you retire some of those duplicate services that you have from third parties. And so this is a great space for for Apex and for frankly for other partners to work with customers, because we have the advantage of seeing this across multiple customers. We have dozens and dozens of customers that we resell licensing to, in addition to dozens and hundreds of customers that we do managed services and professional services. So even if we're not reselling the licensing, maybe they're a bigger customer that's on an EA, an enterprise agreement with Microsoft. We still have that exposure to all of the tools and all of the things to look for in the environment. And so I just wanted to do some quick setup to kind of talk about the licensing that's in business, and kind of how it maps. Frankly, the tools that we need have greatly changed. And there's been a ton of investment by organizations in these tools. I think a number of them, like I mentioned, have ended up in a space where they might be, sort of double paying for some of these things. Interesting scenarios about, if everybody's hybrid and all your services in the cloud, well, let's ponder the value of a firewall, right? Let's think about how you do security, because you got to secure that laptop, whether it's sitting at the office or on a home network. And if you're doing that right, well, how is the work network truly different? And so we can navigate people through those conversations and through those examinations. So distributed work, I mentioned, maintaining security also, kind of like I pointed out, you've got to maintain this sort of zero trust approach wherever these devices and wherever these people go. I spent some time recently with some prospective partners for Apex, talking about zero trust and incident reporting and action, and being able to manage and have visibility to an organization that might be quite dispersed. And guess what? All this time doing it for less money or the same amount of money or not much more money. Gone are the days of massive investment. I tell this story often. It was sure fun in the late 90s, building out infrastructures and so forth. Had a lot of blank checks in the run up to sort of Web 1.0, and doing fun stuff like building $1 million labs out of hardware. It was great. It was really fun for us IT people. I'm not sure it had the business value return that folks maybe had hoped. And so there's been a lot of maturity now baked into what we do. And because of that, cost and the value is always going to be a concern. Security should be top of mind. I say SMB, the Microsoft language for small and medium gets pretty darn big, right? So 5,000 seats and less. The bulk of our customers are in sort of that 100 to 5,000 seat organization. We're having security breaches in this space. It's not just Target. It's becoming more of a business risk. They look to MSPs or managed service providers like Apex to have cybersecurity, to have incident response and those kind of capabilities baked into their offerings. And so, some of the things that help us help our customers in this space is having the right licensing, right? And so just a real quick comparison. I think this is actually one of the more powerful slides because it just visually gives you an easy reference in this business space. And I can show you where some comparisons live for E1, E3, E5, F, G, all that good stuff, to say, hey, what's in and what's out, right? And really understanding, if I'm just cloud, I'm only going to use browser-based stuff. That's the basic level. I want desktop apps. I want people to be able to work offline and do those kinds of things. That's where we see this bump. And then premium, and that's the one I'll focus the most on, just because it brings in the security, the management, the other pieces that we think are so compelling when it comes to the Microsoft platform, and at the same time can deliver cost savings. And you'll see a couple of different reasons how that can happen. So yeah, here's where we'll spend our time. So it has the collaboration tools, the protection against cyber threats, Your work applications are secure wherever you go. And then there's that device security and management capability that's baked in. Um, Defender, actually, this is something that's relatively recent, is that Defender for Business has been moved into the Business Premium licensing SKU. So all of a sudden, you've got that endpoint security baked into that single SKU, that single licensing piece that you can do with Business Premium. And I just want to bring up this next slide because it talks about, what that change means to you. So again, this is a great reference chart when it comes to, hey, what was in before, and now look what happened. Is all that device security stuff got added into Business Premium because MDB or Defender for Business, got moved in, and so you can see, threat intelligence. You've got some cross-platform support, endpoint detection and response, centralized and simple client management, all moved into this SKU. And one of the things that Microsoft, helps us have conversations with customers about is, doing these comparisons. And one key thing that we always remind customers, because we've found some in some pretty interesting predicaments, is that if you are less than 300 seats, you can be in this business space. We've helped remediate a lot of customers where they're 125 people, they're growing, but right now they've got a mishmash of just direct purchased E5 and E3 kinds of SKUs, and we can go in and say, hey, let's make the whole thing E5, and it actually ends up being a cost savings because of the less than 300 seats component. And so you can see this comparison. I've got some others baked in, tools that we can use to help. And one of the things that is helpful to see is how the value stack kind of shapes up. Oftentimes, if we have customers that are on, business basic, or they're on E3, and we have an E5 conversation, there's an element of sticker shock, right? But then we start pulling apart all the other things that they're buying. They've got email protection in a device, or they've got labeling software, label creation and assignment to documents. They're doing some work around conditional access or some multi-factor things. All of a sudden, when it becomes an apples to apples comparison, Microsoft stacks up really, really well. And so what we have a strong history of being able to do is take those cost savings and, pay for enhanced licensing, frankly, pay for the services. One of the things that's really fun for us to do with customers is be able to take those cost savings and give them the deployment services all under that same price tag, right? Where they were coming from. Now we've got some cost savings and some reinvestment in the business to truly adopt these technologies, get, MFA across the whole organization. That's the kind of projects that we look to fund with these cost savings. So I threatened you with some tools. Just shout out to m365maps.com. Give credit where credit's due. They do a lot of work bringing in incredibly rich views of all of the licensing levels, doing comparisons, lots of documentation and documents. I think the only thing I will say is you need to, do this research or work with Apex to do this research. But sort of nothing is final until we, put it in the system and sort of generate a quote and be able to tell you, where you're going to land. But this website, M365 Maps, really has some phenomenal tools. And so I just wanted to scroll through just 3 of the quick pictures that they have around how some of this licensing stacks up. And so here, here's business basic. We saw that on that simple slide. This is obviously much more detailed. Business standard. And all of a sudden we can see, how it expands, to have other pieces, be able to have, local, local apps. And then here's the detailed view of the premium message, right? All of a sudden you get, and he's completely up to date, right? So there's Defender for Business over there on the right hand side as well. And so this gives you that detailed view that we can work with you on to say, hey, how does this map onto your organization? How does this reflect the things that you are doing? How does it reflect things you're paying for in other places? And really do an evaluation too. So shout out to m365maps.com. At the same time, this is where we can really add value, helping you, target the right licensing, helping you be able to realize some cost savings, perhaps roll those cost savings to, fund a more advanced license for Microsoft, or frankly, to be able to fund the deployment and adoption services that a partner like Apex can provide. And so, that's just an example. I picked, one SKU, one sort of family of SKUs to do a quick walkthrough. I think for the audience that we have here, as well as a lot of the customers for Apex, fall into that, small to mid space. And so if you're sub 300, this is really, really compelling to you around what you should be looking for. In addition to next steps, I want to mention just a couple of best practices, licensing reviews, revisiting your licensing on some period, 6 months, a year, is absolutely a best practice. It's one of the things we offer to our customers that we resell for. Renewal time isn't just like AOL or your Sirius radio. We want to sit down with you. We want to evaluate where you're at, where there are any challenges, or where there are opportunities to do something a little bit different. So do those yourself, or frankly, work with a reseller like Apex to be able to do those things for you. I always used to make a joke about T&E budgets or travel and entertainment budgets at Microsoft. I always thought the budget all up was right. It was just allocated poorly. There were some of my peers that had too much travel money and ended up wasting it. And then I had people, working for me at times who didn't have enough to go out and do their jobs, to see partners, to see customers. And so my argument was, I think we have enough in the bucket. It's just allocated poorly when it gets down to the ground. I sort of think of licensing in that same way. I think a lot of us have over allocations and under allocations across our environment, but have both opportunities for savings and opportunities for enhancement. And again, I think that's part of your review. I think that's part of your periodic check-in when it comes to this stuff. At the same time, we do this all the time for customers because of a transition a couple of years ago. I'm going to throw some acronyms at you. We went from CSP to NCE. NCE is the most unfortunate acronym ever. As they were rolling out the next version of licensing through resellers like us, they sort of tagged it the new commerce experience. NCE stuck, and so we're sort of saddled with that to this day. And so when they went through that transition, Apex did an amazing job of working with customers, getting them off the legacy platforms, the legacy licensing, onto this new experience. And so we have a very busy February and March, right? If that's when your renewal is, if you're on sort of yearly plans, that fits well with the motions we have internally. We work like crazy for a couple of months, really focused in this space, trying to help every single customer onboard new customers. That's great. If you're on a month to month or have a different sort of cadence, we're always open for business when it comes to helping you out, doing these reviews, making the time investment and seeing where you're at. Shop around to some extent. I think a lot of folks, especially on the small end, have ended up just laying down a credit card when it comes to licensing with Microsoft and frankly with others, have a reseller help you. I'd love for it to be Apex, but if it's not, get some help. There's value add and potentially even cost savings when it comes to working with a reseller. We have managed services we can add as well above and beyond the CSP support that we do for our resale customers. Love to talk to customers about that all the time. And so, make sure that you're not just taking those default options. You're not just using the online store. You have to make sure that you're optimized in your buying motion. And frankly, resellers can really help in that space. And that's a little bit about licensing and a little bit about us. We've been doing this for a long, long time. We've been in the resale part of this for a long time, and so we've been through multiple transitions. I'm sure there will be more in the future. We have the ability to sell to anybody and be able to deliver licensing across the spectrum of customer types. We've been around for 20 years. It's really been a pleasure to serve so many customers, to work with so many great vendors and partners. We just recently won a new award, so new, hasn't made it onto our standard deck yet. Maybe my marketing team should spend less time cartooning me and a little bit of time updating the deck. I'll have to talk to Michael about that one. Second, when it comes to cranes, best places to work in Michigan and with a Minnesota outpost. And so, that was super, super rewarding to see that kind of recognition for the team that we've built really to serve our customers. And so we'd love to help you. We'd love to get engaged. If you're a current customer and you're not doing this resale work with us, whether it's Microsoft or other products, reach out to your account executive. As always, you can reach out directly to me, S. Thompson at apexdigital.com or sales@apexdigital.com. Visit our website. Our expertise as a CSP is something that we try to keep front and center. I am really happy that the organization has the ability to offer this complete spectrum to our customers: managed services, professional services, hardware and software product, and then cloud licensing. Our ability to deliver across that spectrum makes your life a lot easier. And so give us a chance to help you out. If you're not currently a customer, if you want the slides, if you want to just chat, if you want to talk college football, on Fridays, you'll probably be saddled with me either wearing my game day outfit pre-game. In this week, it happens to be post-game with a Thursday night game. Based on that, for those of you wondering, no, didn't make my kid go to Alabama so I could root for a good football team, because in my defense, the other kid's going to George Washington without a football team. So that was not a main driver. However, I have to admit, I'm looking forward to an Alabama home game. So that's our kickoff for licensing here in the month of September with Fridays with Steve. It's good to be back. It's good to see all of you, and we'll talk to you again next time.